Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis.
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Good day, and welcome to our podcast. This is CampHacker, episode 89, recorded on the 31st of March, 2016. On today's show, Managing Through Generations. If you would like easy, automatic, free updates of our podcast, you can subscribe in iTunes or use the free Stitcher app. This week's CampHacker podcast is sponsored by GoCamp Pro. In a lot of ways, GoCamp Pro was built for directors just like you, people doing it all themselves. We designed this by asking ourselves, what resources do we wish that we had during our time as directors? The material will be helpful to those in their first 5 to 7 years of directing, but so much of it fits for camp directors who are looking for ways to make their camp life easier. To join, go to gocamp.pro. And this week's podcast is sponsored in part by camp pros like you who support the show on Patreon. If you've got even one good idea from the CampHacker podcast, you can show your support for the show for as little as $1 per episode. We've got some great rewards too, just like a Kickstarter campaign. Please go to patreon.com/CampHacker. We hope you enjoy the CampHacker show.
Hello, Camp Pros, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast. My name is Travis Allison. I run the CampHacker Network, and I am one of the founders of GoCamp Pro.
Hi, my name is Dan Weir. I'm the Director of Camping Services at Frost Valley YMCA. Frost Valley is a year-round camp conference education facility up in the Catskill Mountains, and this will be my 20th summer working at summer camp this upcoming summer.
And my name's Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors at Camp Oro. Camp Oro is an all-girls camp situated in the Laurentian Mountains, and it's my, we'll say, 17th year working at the camp-ish.
Right on. Well, welcome to both of you. It's great to have you back. We're having some trouble with Joe, so I don't think he's going to join us. Dan, as you were saying, this is my 20th year. I was realizing that the first podcast we did you would have been saying it was your 13th or 14th summer at camp.
Yeah,
at Frost Valley.
I think this podcast we've been doing is one of the more consistent things that's been in my life.
Right.
Right on. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad to share with you guys and Joe. So welcome to those of you watching on YouTube or listening on your phone. Today we wanted to talk about something that would be a bit bigger topic, just thinking big and following up on the last podcast, which was, but a moment in the day to want to think about something bigger. And we're going to talk about managing through the generations and managing specifically staff through the generations. And Dan, I wonder if you could just start us off with sort of where we're going with this.
Yeah, so I think the reason we chose it to be managing generations and not just managing millennials or managing up, but really talking about every generation is because it seems like this is just a reoccurring topic in our industry. So ACA, in my time of going to the Tri-State Camp Conference, has had two authors, two keynotes. One was Bruce Tolgan, and one was that was probably like mid 2000s, and then 2 years ago, Dr. Tim Elmore, and those two people, same topic, just teaching people how to bridge the generation gap with it. And so this topic is so much more than just saying, oh, millennials do this, or oh, people do over 50 do this. It is really much more about bridging the gap between two people that have differences in perspective, differences in age, differences in hours they might be willing to work or can work, and really understanding that as a whole. And that's why we went with a broader topic than just, hey, millennials are this, or people that are in the 30s are disconnected. We went with the whole thing. As a 30-year-old, I feel like I can make fun of myself in that sense. But yeah, so.
Cool.
And we can make fun of you, Dan. So it's all.
Please do, please do. Before we segue into the actual thing, so one of the funnier things of being at the same camp for 20 years, right, is growing up here and walking around, and I had this nostalgia when I walk in some buildings. And I walk into other rooms with staff, and I feel so incredibly old. And so there's moments where I can literally think of the time I was in this spot when I was 16 and connect to that emotion, that feeling. And then walk into another room, and I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm turning 35 this summer. Got it. Like, I am clearly over here, And I think that's the unique thing about camp is that everybody that works in camp for the most part is very youthful in their mindset. And so when they hit a generation gap, it's aggravating. It's frustrating. And I think for people, they assume, oh, I've always been able to connect with the youth, and for some reason I can't. But with this topic, we really wanted to stick to staff as well too. I think kids are kids, and in terms of 7 to 15-year-olds and being those issues are continuing the same things. But as workforces change, as the decades move on, I think it's important to recognize that that what a trick might have worked a decade ago with a 20-year-old is not a trick that works now, and that is important to recognize, and why the topic's so broad. So, but I'll swing it back out to everyone else. So,
Kev, do you have any thoughts to get us started?
Yeah, I was just thinking about also growing up at camp, and we have an alumni that comes often to help out with some of the gardening, and she grew up at camp, and she's sort of a second mother to me, and she would often tear up when she would get to camp because of the smell. She was like, "It's the smell; it brings back all these memories." And I would look at her like she was crazy. I'd be like, "Wrap it up! Come on, let's do this. We got to do gardening." And now I totally tear up. I see, a kid. Somebody drops something and then a camper helps her. And I'm like, oh, it's just so beautiful. We're changing the world. And I get super emotional. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm turning into Leslie. That's what's happening. But you have to embrace it. You have to embrace it. I want to build a little bit on something that Dan said. And now I can't quite remember what he said, but I was like, this is totally great. I have it. It's coming. And no, it's gone. It's not there.
Well, let you think about it.
Doesn't want to hang out. Yeah.
You think on it, and I'll take over for a bit. So this topic to me, in so many ways, comes down to philosophy, and not. I think we have a greater percentage of open, considerate thinkers in our industry than in others, but we still have the spectrum. So we have people who can deal with change. And, I love Carol Dweck's stuff about being set in your ways or being open-minded, and that you can work on being more open-minded, but that it is that philosophy that, that things can change and you should be changing. And so I certainly see this in the consulting side of the business, where you have marketing clients who, when I try to get to this point before I take them on as a client, I have a client, somebody who wanted to be a client, who said to me, we've always done it this way, and I just want to tweak what we're already doing. I don't want to add anything new. I don't want to change in any way. I just want to tweak what we're already doing. And in the end, I had to say, look, we're not a good match, because I am talking about change, and it's going to be hard work, but it's going to pay off. But you have to be open to the idea that things are changing. And so dealing with people in different directions, older than you or younger than you, you're going to have to be open to the fact that things are not going to be the same way. The same way you can't market camp the way you did when you're cranking stuff out in the Gestetner in the 70s. You have to look at things with an open mind. And I think that, to me, is maybe should have been my wrap up point instead of my intro point. But if you go into this saying things have to change and will change all the time, then you're going to set yourself up in better spot. You're going to be in a better position to be less frustrated and to get along better with your staff, younger or older.
I really think you brought up a really great parallel is marketing. If like I don't know, in the 90s, 80s, 90s, it was send the brochure 16 times and, keep sending it. And now it's much more about sincerity, and real and authenticity with what you're doing. I think years ago it was about polished, and now it's the shaky cam footage on YouTube carries as much weight, if not more, than your brochure, because it's showing the real thing. And so when you think about how we're constantly adapting with marketing, that's constantly how we have to. Marketing is a reflection of the time period that we're in, and that's how we should be thinking about working with staff. Is that we're constantly adapting to where the staff are coming from, and there's some unifying things, like communication and organization, and that everyone gets behind. It's more about presentation style and giving certain areas for it to breathe, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think that the essence of individuals comes down to, when it especially comes to working at summer camp, you want to do a good job. Staff want to do a good job, and that's when they come to your camp. Maybe at the halfway point, sometimes they falter, but they essentially want to do a good job, and they also essentially want to impress you. And what it comes down to is the, as you say, Dan, it's sort of the learning styles. And as leaders, we have to adapt to the learning styles of our staff, of our campers, and of our parents. And how do we get the information to them? How do we inspire them? How do we, get them hooked? Drink the Kool-Aid, if you will. And that's the piece. I went to a party with a bunch of friends, and it was really obvious the group of people that don't work with a younger population and the group of people that do. And the group of people that don't work with a younger population, there's almost a fear of Definitely. Who are these individuals. And I live in Montreal, and so hipsters we're crawling with hipsters everywhere. I love it. But one of the people at the party said, I don't understand this hipster. What is a hipster? And I was like, it's not as frightening as as you're making it sound. I was like, well, there are people that tend to like putting things in mason jars, making things from scratch, secondhand clothing because they don't want to leave a negative imprint on the environment.
Not all boots go out into the hiking. Some boots are for show.
Exactly, yeah. But it's an innocent. So, and I think what happens a lot of the times is as we get older, we're put into the role of teaching. So teaching our children, supervising our staff. And so we're in a role of knowing, and less in learning. And so when we're not learning anymore, or less of it, then when we have to learn something new, it becomes a little bit frightening because you're supposed to be the person that knows stuff. And then that creates some form of divide. But if you start looking at it as every summer when you come back to camp, you're there to learn from your staff, and you're there to learn from your campers, and that's part of your growing. I think the generation gap becomes less just because that is your role, but we're sort of placed into a leadership position by default because of age. And then it's the same the other way. If you're working with somebody that's older, sometimes it's difficult for them to hear you because they see you as younger. Maybe you should be less experienced than them, but you're not. And it's sort of bridging that gap and saying, we have a similar goal. But I was at a camp show, and there's two camp directors that every time they walked by me, they sort of said, "We're too old for this. We need to get out." And there was joking, but there was some seriousness in their voice too.
They were kind of serious, yeah.
Yeah. Like, why are we here? Our booth is coming down. Do you have duct tape? I don't want to do this anymore. So I was like, well, maybe you've hit your limit, but. Yeah, it's a personal check, but you're trying to connect with individuals is what it comes down to.
Right. Dan and I had a discussion that wasn't part of the podcast last spring when there were a lot of people struggling with getting staff to make commitments for the summer and people dropping out at the last minute. And and it wasn't an issue that we had personally experienced. Now, I was a director now last 9 years ago, but it wasn't something we went through. But Dan had said it wasn't something that he was going through, with staff making a commitment and a growing number of them not sticking to those commitments. And I think part of this comes down to communication. If you're communicating up or down, your communication style has to change over time. Certainly, fear of a younger generation is nothing new. That's centuries old. And certainly in the last...
That's the one consistency.
Yeah,
That's the one consistency forever.
Yeah.
The younger generation is going to burn the place down.
Right.
That's the one consistent thing.
Oh, no. I might burn it down by accident. I forget stuff now. But Travis, what you're saying with communication, too, I think it's also, you take a step further, it's engagement. It's not just speaking to them. It's making sure they feel engaged, and I think I remember having that conversation and talking about how using social media to that benefit, like having this ongoing engagement conversation of letting them know what you're planning in the off season and building a momentum. And now, think of every summer camp. If they don't have a newsletter or an email updating families, are they really retaining their campers as they get closer? Going back to the marketing parallel, if you hug your staff like you hug your customers, it'll work out.
And that's why I really encourage other camps to get as many staff members involved throughout the year on many projects that they're interested in. And a lot of the time it has to do with social media. So like the top, the 20, Instagram countdown to first campfire, have 2 staff members work on that. New signage for camp that has, if it's your, an anniversary that year, that has history facts, certain things that staff members are excited and interested in doing. But if they feel valued, and that is a part of our younger generation, is that they feel seen. When you're in such a world where everything's posted, everything is so much of your life is online. For part, it's to be recognized but to feel valued. And if you reach out and say, what are you interested in? What are you excited about? And the more staff that are involved, the more that they're excited to share that with their friends, so it sort of creates this momentum. And just even having returning staff phone, new staff members have Skype chats, that little bit of responsibility that makes your job so much easier. We have, I want to knock on wood right now, but we haven't had, since we've been doing that in the past, I haven't had anybody drop out, but we make sure everybody has a form of responsibility that they're excited about, some form of project that they come up with myself. And I love it.
Just to clarify that, Gab, so you, upon hiring, will work with them and say, what's a project that you want to take on between now and the summer? And here are some options. Is that how that works?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the times it's things like, for example, if there's something on camp that maybe we could do better, then we come up with the idea on how we can do that better. And then they work on how they're going to present it to the staff. So they just know that when they get to camp, they're going to present this idea that myself and that individual came up with, and how are they going to present that change? And it's exciting, but they're looking forward to that little piece of putting their stamp. And I am too, quite frankly, there's some really cool stuff that comes out of it, but I know that person's not backing out because they're excited about leaving their mark.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. Sorry. No, I wrote down 5 phrases that I use, or 5 things I use with talking to any generation employee to get their buy-in. The common theme is getting the individual attention with them. I could dive into that. I just didn't know. Travis, did you want to speak on what Gab? Okay, great. So the first one was I always explain everything I'm doing. I'm trying to build a community, and that everybody is part of that community, and so that they're valued. The second thing I do is use the word invested, saying I'm invested in you, and really making sure they understand when I say that, meaning that I am here trying to develop and grow you as much as I'm growing the camp, and saying that to everybody that I work with, and then really explaining why I need them. So this would be the third phrase: is I need you on this team because you bring this quality. And I was talking with somebody yesterday who is who's I'm trying to think, he's in his early 40s, and talking about he doesn't have as much time to give at times because he has a son and he's got to take care of things regarding life, where somebody else that is just starting at our place can work longer hours, and talking about making sure he understands his value on the team. That's not just about the hours he could put in, but the perspective or what he brings, and moving the ball forward, so to speak. The last two are really questions for them. One is one's more of a statement saying, I need you to coach me on how to best work with you and how to best keep you in the loop. So really putting it in their court of like, okay, it's your responsibility to explain to me how I should be communicating to you. And often when you phrase it like that, coaching, that's a phrase that you can use when you're managing up or you're managing down, for lack of a better word. So you can use it with your supervisor or you can use it with the people below you, because they will always feel like they have an opportunity to explain it. And then the last is I just always ask, asking is, how do you like to be communicated with? And then if they're, obviously that could be pretty crazy if you have 6 different styles of communication amongst your team or amongst your staff, but then asking them, can they adapt to this way? And that's the way you're going to be communicating primarily. Is that something you can adapt to? So you're essentially saying is, I hear that's how you want to hear things. I'm going to do my best to give it to you that way, but really this is how it's going to be coming down the pipe. Just get ready for it. I want to say that no one ever says no. You can't communicate to me that way. But those are just 5 phrases I think in terms of takeaways from this conversation that and I'll put that in the show notes too. Just that I use with talking with anybody of any generation, especially if I'm not from that generation.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah. We have moved to naturally talking about working with younger staff, but I also want to talk about working with older staff. And I think so many of these things just apply. As Dan said, these 5 things would help you just clarify with that individual expectations and trying to adjust to their styles. One of the things that that works, it's sort of a bigger management, not just the communication, but a bigger management thing, I think involves having some real clear goals about if generations are important to you, or if you only want to deal with staff who are, say, 18 to 25, or if you think there are some bigger missional aspects to having older staff. One of my great camp experiences was getting to visit Camp Nebagaman in Wisconsin a couple summers ago, and one of the things that was truly remarkable to me is how many older staff they had, retired age staff that they had. Most of them had been campers there. It's boys camp, so these are all men. These retired generation was all men, and there's about 6 of them on a staff of, I don't know, maybe 70 at the most. Probably less than that, actually, maybe 50 staff. And so the camp had done a couple of things to set that up well. They had, first of all, said, we're open to people in any generation coming, and consider us when you retire and you're looking for something fun to do in the summer. You want to go back to the great smell of camp and to see those wonderful moments, then please consider us. They had also specifically built some accommodation that was a little higher end, not super fancy, but a little higher end for those people. And also for staff members with families. So they had like a section head who would bring his spouse and their kids to camp. And they had things set up with childcare for the kids and this good space that the family could share, that they could manage camp life. And that was, I'm sure, a big investment for them to create that kind of space. But the payoff is that they have this awesome example of generations working together from, in their case, 21 to 75 probably, and people learning in all directions. And it was just a great example of what camp could be for everybody, all these things. And they had just been very purposeful about, we want this, we will provide it, and we're going to tell people that it's there. And it was such an awesome, it was great to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I think it's obviously creates amazing role modeling, not just for the campers, but for the staff as well. This is what, camp is important to individuals, not at a specific time in their life, but
Yes.
at all different stages of their lives. And also just learning from, often our camp staff have way more responsibility than they do anywhere else. And just having sort of that support figure around, to say you're doing a good job, or I noticed you did this, I'm sure is very, very comforting to staff members. But it's lovely that they have somebody that they can look up to as well. I think it's fantastic, and it's like anybody else. It's setting the expectations clearly before they come to camp, and what their role is, and also what to do when staff are not doing what they think they should be doing, and saying there's certain ways to deal with this, and those type of things. But I think bridging those generation gaps, the more we can do it, it's just creates a community that is so much more empathetic. And I think camps could really, really benefit. And a lot of the times it's because we don't know how to facilitate that. But if you put a little bit of time aside and plan ahead, and then you start small. You start small.
Right.
Yeah.
The smallest things have the greatest payoff. And, if such things as at staff training, don't have your senior staff sit separate from your counseling staff, and make sure that shuffles every time, so that and we've been so specific as to send resource level staff into the dining hall ahead of counselors in the first couple of days of staff training, so that there is at least one of them at every table, and then we let the counselors in, and then it becomes a little bit more natural as the week goes on. And there are occasional meals you have to sit together to plan the next thing, but we're really intentional about that. And that meant that we would have nurses in their 60s, sitting with high school students, and everybody working to figure out how to have the conversation. And it meant so much in terms of the relationship with each other, and and basically how the satisfaction of the summer went was having that set up from the very beginning.
Yeah. I think for me, when it comes to experiencing a generation gap, I think what it comes down to is understanding how the world is now perceiving you. And I think that's a scary experience. And I know that it felt like a blink when I was the youngest at everything. And then all of a sudden I was the wise one. And I was like, how did that happen? It felt like it was an 18-month shift. All of a sudden they're like, and you, what do you think? I was like, no, when did this occur? But the perspective, I think the larger the gap one feels, it's more about how you feel people are looking at you, and how they're experiencing you, and trying to understand what that relationship looks like. And I think once you sort of reflect a little bit more on that, that helps actually with the relationship of that gap that you're experiencing. And I know certainly that's where I start is how come I'm experiencing this? What's difficult for me? It's not necessarily what's difficult for them. It's more what am I struggling with? And that goes with somebody that's older than me. It could be a self-confidence thing on my part, and it can also be somebody that's younger than me. Also, perhaps a self-confidence thing on my part. Am I cool enough? I will admit that I do buy shoes to impress my staff, and I just got some really nice shoes. And one of my staff members were like, "Those are killer shoes." I was like, "Oh, these things? Oh, thanks." But it's totally on purpose.
I do it with music. I posted. I was listening to Kendrick Lamar's new album. And you would have thought I posted "I love young people." It was so funny. I was like, Kendrick Lamar's new album is just the same as Kanye's first stuff, and I'm like, it's just the same as slick Rick stuff. Like it's not that much. Yeah, but
I'm not saying you can't use your
game.
tricks. You need those.
Yeah, you got to use your wheelhouse. Yeah.
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 But also that's it, going back to, hey, can you teach me? Like play the idiot and just say
Right.
I don't know if that's the right word to use, but just say, and you can do that with everyone. You do it with everyone. Well, like, oh, I don't know that. Yeah, please explain to me. And there's a psychological power of getting somebody, when somebody explains something to you, they feel like they are now investing in you in a sense that like they're taking time with you and they're going to try and coach you and lead you. And you think about every person that we hire for camp setting, from business to the maintenance to the counseling staff, it's people that want to work with people and people that are passionate about being at a camp. You could, the people that are registrars, they could do the functions of their job at a bank, but they choose to work for less salary at a camp because they believe in the mission and what the purpose is, and that regardless of what type of camp and operation you run. Anyway, you split up your demographic for private versus nonprofit. Everyone works at a camp because they believe in the outcome. They believe that it's a good place for children, and you go back to that. I mean, that is something that could bridge everyone together. But yeah, it's just funny. Like I definitely have my tricks of like knowing who to talk to about what and stuff. So,
right on. I think there's lots more to cover about this. So if people are listening to this on the CampHacker website, do leave us a comment, or you can always tweet us. I'm at CampHacker, and Dana's at Dan Loves Camp, and Gab is at Gabrielle Rail. We're interested in, did we cover this to your satisfaction? Is there other things you were yelling at the earphones or yelling at the YouTube about this? So please do let us know. If you found this topic helpful, we'd be so grateful if you would leave us an honest review on iTunes. So go to camphacker.tv/iTunes, and that'll open up your iTunes. You can just leave it right in there. But also then you can see all the other episodes that we're recording. We are at the present recording episode 89, so we're approaching 100 episodes pretty quickly. And we're so grateful that all these people have checked in and been listening to this over the years. As we've said at the beginning, we've been doing this podcast, or a version of it now, for almost 7 years. So it's a great pleasure to have these conversations and for your involvement as a listener as well. Excuse me. So then what I think we should do is switch us over to the tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
Since I've got the mic, I will start us off for once. This actually is so relevant. It wasn't why I picked it, but it's so relevant to what we're talking about today. It is a game called the True Story Game, based on a podcast that I love. It's a game of true tales told to friends. This is what it looks like. I will put the link to buy it in the show notes at camphacker.tv/podcast. And it is an awesome game. It is just basically a game of conversation starters. So if you had 10 of these cards on every table at a meal and spent 5 minutes, probably need 10 or 15 to have everybody have their say, or you could rotate and have 2 people talk per meal. It's so simple in its simplicity, in its concept, but you basically are just given a word to talk about, and then you tell a story about it. It's designed that your stories get more complicated. You have to do it 3 times in each round. It gets a little more complicated. But, topics, cards, for example, are teenage dream, grandfather, robbed, scar, all these things that could get a story going. And I just got the game and was super excited about it. And this past Easter, when we had everybody here from our family, we played it one night, started at 11 or 10 o'clock at night, and just had a great conversation for an hour and a half that everybody told a little story. And even though we're family, I think everybody learned something about each other in the group. And it was really kind of a magical moment for us. And I think that
That's awesome.
this is a great tool that you could use at camp. And I don't recall the price, but I think it's less than $20 or $20, and that too will be in the show notes. And worth having even a set or two to put out on the tables at a mealtime. Even just leave them there and see what happens, or to formally introduce something. So it's the True Story game from the True Story podcast people, which I'd also recommend you subscribe to, another great podcast. So there you go. Something with great impact and directly related to what we're talking about today. Gab, what's your tool?
My tool is called the Noun Project, and it's a collective of icons that you can download for free. And I'm a huge believer of using icons to represent certain topics, especially in staff manuals and slides, instead of just using words for those that need a little bit more of a visual representation. And what's really neat about it is that you can also give a donation. So if you're going to, download a whole bunch, you can donate, or you can, just use it for free and cite the artist. But if you're looking to spice up some of your documents, especially for staff learning, the Noun Project is awesome.
Right on. It's great. What a good pick. And for you, Dan, you've been doing some reading.
Yeah. So the book is called Hug Your Haters, and it's by Jay Baer. And so I heard his interview on the Art of Charm podcast, and I decided to pick it up. And the short version of it is he talks about how we don't address our reviews that are negative well enough.
Right.
And if you look on products online, when you look at a negative review, how detrimental that can be to your brand, no matter what you have. And that you, instead of, most people will ignore it and assume that the good will tune out the bad, but you should be addressing it. And it's a fantastic book. It even has a poster in it. He gives you takeaways on media strategies with it. He tells you about how not to be emotionally invested in it. He talks about the difference between, I'm looking at the poster, on-stage haters versus off-stage haters. So people that will publicly bash you versus privately bash you, right. And what they want and how to resolve it. But it's just, I am constantly looking at how to refine our practices, and it was reaffirming some of the things we're doing. It gave me some ideas of how to respond more efficiently in the future. And he talks about how to do this in an efficient light, which was really the thing that attracted me to the most of the book. I think a lot of these books that I read or that get recommended, they're more philosophical than implementation and execution. And this talked about how if you read a negative review about yourself or your company online, how to answer it without bringing all your emotional baggage and taking up more of your time and ruining your day, and how to do it effectively. So it's a great book. I got the poster over my desk, and just reminds me to take things seriously when they come across. And so I recommend it highly. And
I haven't read it yet, but I loved his last book. Utility was just a game changer for me and the way I thought about these things. So I'm excited to read it. Those are great picks. Thank you.
Nice.
Right on. So thank you again to those who are listening. If you want to spread the news, you've been listening to the CampHacker podcast. We've made it easy. Please go to camphacker.tv/love. And then I'll put out a tweet on our behalf, and we'd be grateful if you did that. If you have other questions or feedback, please do get in touch with us. If you want to get in touch with Dan, how should they do that?
Yeah, so you can tweet me at Dan Loves Camp. I'm not using Twitter too much these days, but you can also email me at campdirector@frostvalley.org, and I work at Frost Valley YMCA as well. But those are the best ways to get a hold of me. And then you can find my past presentations on danlovescamp.com.
Right. Cool. Well, thanks for being here, Dan.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
And Gab, if people want to reach out to you?
Yep, they can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Gabrielle Rail, and check out where I work at waro.com.
Excellent. Yeah, and if you have anything for me, Travis at CampHacker.tv. I am at CampHacker on all of the socials. I'm doing my best to claim all of those titles or those handles, which will be my parting advice for you. Every time you hear of a new social network, go sign up for it. That doesn't mean you're making a lifetime commitment to them. It just means that you're reserving the handle of your camp. So create an account in your own name and one in the camp's name and everything. You should have that in Snapchat. You should have it in Tumblr. You should on and on and on. And you should try to keep them the same. And so that's my parting advice, is to make sure you do that. Not enough camps are doing that, and I'm seeing people run into trouble. The funny example that I see often is Instagram. Somebody will talk, not camp specifically, but somebody will talk on Instagram and use their Twitter handle, the person that they're talking to, their Twitter handle, and they haven't claimed that on Instagram, so it goes nowhere, or somebody else has claimed it. So every time you hear of a new social network, get your butt out there, spend the 2 minutes it takes to sign up, and claim that same handle everywhere. That's why you can reach me at CampHacker on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, etc. So, there you go. We want to take just a minute and thank those people who are sponsoring us on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/CampHacker, .com/CampHacker. You can also support the show. That helps pay for Matt, who does a combination of production and blog writing and all those things. And so we're grateful for that. None of the four of us make any money off this. We just want to put it out there for the community, but it's nice for us to be able to support Matt and to pay him. So we've got stuff there you can donate for as little as $1 a month, and it does make a huge difference. Speaking of Matt, I understand that this is public knowledge, but I'll edit it out if not. Matt got his first camp director job just this week. And he's been so loyal to us and looked after us for so many years. He is moving up and will be directing for the first time this summer at Camp Edgewood in Guelph, Ontario. And we're really proud of him. And it's nice that nice to see him staying in the camp industry. So thanks, Iskis, for all that you do. Finally, I would like to say find the show notes, past episodes, again at camphacker.tv/podcast. And thanks for the evening, friends.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.